Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Coach Anderson and welcome back to the YouTube channel where we talk about all things science. In this video, we'll take a moment to review everything you've learned thus far about competition and relationships in ecosystems. So what is competition? Well, in an ecosystem, competition is when organisms fight or compete for resources. Now, these resources could be biotic or abiotic. We said that biotic means living or once living, and abiotic means non-living. Okay? In class, we played a game called Oh Deer, where we all pretended that we were deer fighting for limited resources. These resources included things like food, water, and shelter. Now, things that are living or once living, like most food sources, would be considered biotic. On the other hand, things like air, water, shelter, these are non-living things, so they are abiotic. All right? We also did another lab where you fought for beans and paper clips, which represented food and water. Now, you competing amongst your peers for limited resources is an example of competition, right? There's only so many resources in an ecosystem, and if you're unable to get enough resources to sustain life, you may die, okay? Now, when you were fighting for resources, you realized that you needed enough to keep surviving, right? We needed 8 beans to survive. If we didn't get 8 beans, we died. And ultimately, that's what happens in a population or in an ecosystem. If an organism does not get enough resources, then it may die, or it will no longer be able to live and reproduce in its ecosystem. Now, we called this a limited factor or a limiting factor. And what this is a resource that stops the growth or increase of a population. Limiting factors don't allow populations to continue to grow because there's only so many resources. So to recap all of that, competition is when organisms fight or struggle and they compete for resources. Sometimes they get enough and they survive, and other times they don't get enough of the resource and they ultimately die. Okay? We have biotic and abiotic resources. Biotic means living or once living, and abiotic means non-living. So there you have it, right? And in an ecosystem, organisms are constantly competing for resources, both biotic and abiotic. And a limiting factor is a resource that holds back the growth of a population. Now, another key vocabulary word that I want you to know is a niche, okay? A niche is really an organism's role in its environment. It's how the organism gets its food, what eats it or hunts it, as well as how it reproduces and what conditions are needed for survival. If 2 organisms have the exact same niche, right, they're competing for the same resources, they're more likely to continue to compete with each other and fight because they both have this struggle to survive. They need the same resources to live. And this was something that you saw when you worked hands-on to compete in class for the beans and the paper clips in our lab. Now, another thing that you need to know about ecosystems is that organisms have relationships with one another, okay? In an ecosystem, organisms are constantly interacting with each other. Now, one big interaction that you may have heard of is the predator-prey interaction. This is where we have a predator, which is an organism that hunts, eats, or kills another, and the prey, which is being hunted, eaten, or killed. Now, in a food web or a food chain, you could see this, like when a shark eats another fish, right? The shark is the predator, and the fish is the prey. Same thing can be said if a rabbit eats grass. The rabbit would be the predator, and the grass would be the prey. So predator-prey, right? The predator is something that eats, hunts, or kills another, and the prey is what is being eaten, hunted, or killed. The next thing we'll look at is symbiosis or symbiotic relationships, okay? A symbiotic relationship is just a relationship within an ecosystem where organisms interact with one another, and typically one organism benefits. Now, there's 3 types of symbiotic relationships that we looked at in class. These are mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. Mutualism is a relationship in which both organisms benefit. It's good for both organisms involved. On the other hand, we have commensalism. This is where one organism benefits and the other is unaffected. It's neither helped nor harmed. So commensalism means one organism benefits and the other isn't affected. And then we have parasitism. This is where one organism benefits and the other is harmed. Okay? So 3 types of symbiotic relationships. Let's go ahead and look at an example of each. Let's first look at mutualism. Now, this is a relationship in which both organisms benefit. It's good for everybody involved. Okay? Benefit means good, so mutualism is when both organisms get good things. For example, we have bees and flowers. The bees collect nectar for food, and simultaneously, they pollinate the flowers. So both species benefit. We also talked about Nemo as one of our examples, right? With clownfish and sea anemones. This is where the clownfish finds shelter in the anemone, and then in turn, the anemone gets cleaned up by the clownfish, okay? So mutualism means it's good for both organisms and both species benefit. The next type of symbiotic relationship we looked at was commensalism. Now, commensalism is a symbiotic relationship in which one organism benefits and the other is unaffected. It's neither helped or harmed, okay? Commensalism means one organism benefits and the other is unaffected. Some good examples might include things like birds nesting in trees. A bird sets up its nest in a tree, it gets shelter, and the tree is pretty much unaffected. Another example we looked at was remoras and sharks. The shark swims by, it's eating, and the food scraps fall down and the remoras get the food scraps. The shark is essentially just doing its thing. The remoras get food, so it's good for them. The shark is just existing, okay? So in a commensalistic relationship, one organism or one species benefits and the other is unaffected. Last type of symbiotic relationship we're going to look at is parasitism. Now you look at the word and you almost see the word parasite, right? And so parasites are a great example of a parasitistic relationship. Now parasitism is a relationship in which one organism benefits and the other is harmed, okay? Parasites, for example, might live in an animal's body. The parasite gets food, it's great for the parasite, but it's bad for the animal or person that it's living in because they're being harmed. Another good example we looked at was leeches. Leeches attach to the body of an animal or a human. The leech sucks your blood, right? That's great for the leech. It's getting its food and nutrients. And in turn, the animal or the human is losing blood and could develop an infection. So it's bad for us as the animal or human that is losing our blood. Same thing goes for mosquitoes, okay? A mosquito comes and lands on your arm, it bites you, it takes your blood, it gets nutrients, it gets food. That's great for the mosquito, but for you, it might give you an infection or disease, right? And it leaves a little mosquito bite, so it's bad for you. So parasitism is when one organism benefits and the other is harmed, okay? So it's good for one, bad for the other. Now you have a unit check coming up, so I want to quickly review everything about ecosystem organization, which we talked about in the previous video. Now again, an ecosystem includes all the living and non-living things in a particular area and deals with how organisms interact with one another and their environment. Now, ecosystems are organized into a hierarchy or ranked order with increasingly specific levels. Okay, we have an ecosystem which includes all living and non-living things, all the biotic and abiotic things in an area. Then we have a community. A community is just the living things in an area. Okay, all living things in an area make up the community. Then we have a population. This is all of one species, so all living things of one species. And then we have an organism, which is one single living thing. Okay, so in an ecosystem, we have a hierarchy or a ranked order that goes from organism to population to community and to ecosystem. All right, so that's what you need to know about ecosystem organization. All right, that's all I have for you today. I hope this video helped you learn something new or was a great refresher for materials that you've already learned here in class. Remember to make good choices, be kind to one another, and I look forward to seeing you in class this week.